today's episode, we are going to show you a process that you always most often face. One of the most common things, sizing a ring down. And what may seem like a simple process and you wonder why the cost is what sometimes it is, well, I may end up making it look simple, but it is not, and takes many years of experience to do the job right. Here we have our ring, our classic solitaire, and in this instance, it is a size 6 and the client needs it to be a size 5. That's one size. You're going to get to see it brought down and put back together. Two of the first tools that are involved in that process is a millimeter gauge and calipers. And I'll show you why and what we use them for. These are the two instruments necessary to get the size right. Okay, so what we're going to do, I happen to know, and you learn it in jewelry school, that one size is equivalent to 2.5 millimeters of distance of gold at the bottom of the ring. So I have set my millimeter gauge to the 2.5 millimeter mark, and with the opening where it is, I use, of course, a little bit of extra magnification at my age so that I can get that marking just right and get the opening of that leverage gauge exactly the width I want, equivalent to that 2.5 millimeters, allowing just a little more than less. Here we have the two tools close to each other. I go to the center of the back of the ring. The ring is polished and making the job easier to see my markings. Also, my gauge has sharp points at the end as well, and is metallic, so it will create the scratches, so to speak, I need to be able to mark that width. And in this case, all it is that much is all it takes to create the lines I need that give me the 2.5 millimeters. Remember, 2.5 millimeters to a size. If we were doing two sizes, that would be 5 millimeters. So now we have our markings set. We're going to now take a saw blade and saw through where those markings are. Now, let's make those saw cuts at our predetermined marks that give us the distance to remove. Now, cleverly enough, I was looking for what you use on a saw blade to be able to make it operate more efficiently, and oftentimes you can use beeswax. Well, I didn't see where I had any, and our director cleverly suggested that he had a lip balm that was beeswax, but he didn't have it with him. Well, I remembered I did, and I thought, wow, that is he goes, will that work? I said, that is a perfect substitute. Any of those are paraffin-based and wax-based and will act as a great lubricant for doing things that require it. And one of them is to be able to lubricate your saw blade so you get a more efficient cut and keeps that saw blade from breaking. And it's at that point where it just needs to be bent a little bit to be able to be broken off. And then I'm not searching for it if I would have sawn all the way through. There we go. Now we're going to clean up the two sides and bring them in to meet. Back, we have another tool in our hand, the Fordham flex shaft. I have the wheel on it that I want. It's a sanding disc, and what I'm going to do is remove any burrs and make sure both those sides that I have sawn are nice, flat, and will level up flush with each other when I close the two sides together. So let's do that. I've cleaned up the sides. Now I want to bring them in together, and they make a special pair of pliers if you want to invest in such a things. They're expensive, but they're very effective, and they don't dent the shank, and they'll last a lifetime. So I suggest a pair, even though you can use other pliers to do this. I do like the way these work, especially for heavy, thick rings and shanks where you really need that additional leverage and power. So now I'm closing in the gap evenly, keeping my ring as round as possible to start with. And now that we've closed them up, we're going to bring them over to the soldering position where we get them ready for the next step. What you must do to help the solder flow and to prevent oxidation is you apply a boric acid and alcohol mixture. The alcohol simply burns away and leaves the white coating that you're going to see, in case you wondered what that is. And it's very useful for preventing oxidation on the ring when it attains the temperatures needed to make the solder flow. So we're going to come over here, we're going to pick up this piece of solder that we've cut. Now I use a very high carat solder. It's actually a 20 carat solder on white gold, and why I do that is it prevents any kind of pitting, and it also makes a stronger bond than any of the other lower carat solders. It's also a very white solder, and if you saw that, it flowed into the joint. I'm going to look at the other side of it to make sure the solder flowed all the way around. Now, do you see the stone that's in there? It's a sapphire, right? Well, I did not apply a heat sink or special material to the stone to prevent heat from getting to it, because sapphires can actually take heat. As you know, they're heat treated. For the most part, if I knew this was a non-heat treated sapphire, I'd make sure no heat got to it, even though the temperatures here that it would attain would never be near what heat treated sapphires take to actually make a difference in the stone. Copper tongs are better, or plastic, for putting into the sodium bisulfate solution, which is known as the pickle pot in the industry and with jewelers. And you don't have to buy the expensive ones. You can use a crock pot and it will work just fine. That's what I have here. So I have put my ring in. It's been soaking for a couple of minutes, and what that will do is remove the boric acid and alcohol solution that was on it. So I have it here. I'm going to rinse it off. I've got, of course, lucky to have the steamer so I can make sure I steam any other residue off and help dry the ring. And this I usually suggest to hold it with tongs, but my fingers are a little callous to this, because that steam, no matter what, it's still hot. You see, by habit, I always keep the ring just like on a finger. You always know where it is in that instance. I've been known, before I learned some of these habits, to set it down elsewhere, and then you're looking all around for it. Use one of your 10 digits to store the ring you're going to be working on. So here's an inside ring sanding unit. Very effective for the first stage. Let's measure it on our ring mandrel. We're looking to get to that size 5. Okay, now you see, there's the 5. We're just short of it. That is exactly where we want to be at this point, because we have not rounded it out. Remember, we got it close to round. So what you do, first, just pull it down with your fingers as you spin it down the mandrel. Now you see the solder on the sides. We're going to remove that with this wheel. Now, in the olden days, and I had to learn this technique when I was a goldsmith, working for an Italian goldsmith. Oh yes, and I must honor him. He was a great mentor. Rocco Rafrano was his name. He has passed many years since then, because I was 20 when I was working at his shop in Denver. And I tell you this because he made me learn everything old school. I brought this exact wheel out with me, and he would not let me use it until I had learned to do things his way. And I would be using a file right now, taking 5 times as long. But to learn it old school, I owe him the respect that he deserves. He taught me things that I could never have learned from anyone else, and it was a great treat. He later gave in and let me use my wheel when I proved to him in a sizing race how much faster I could size a ring because of it. So here we have it now. We've removed the majority, if not all, of the solder. We have sanding marks left, which now need to be made to a finer grit. So again, tucking the ring as I do without setting it down, we're going to change the wheel out to the one that's going to be a finer grit that is going to take us to a step closer to polishing it. This is a really very high quality industrial buffer. It has the collecting filters in it and the suction motor. So really for an indoor use, I do recommend something like this, even though it's expensive. Remember, the gold recovered over time could pay for it. So we're just going to put a high red rouge right here, our polishing compound, a red rouge finish, which is a very high polish. And the red rouge is about as high as anybody goes to polish a gold or platinum ring. All right, there she is, all nice and shiny, ready to be cleaned and rhodium. So I've steamed it. After the ultrasonicing process, remember, not all things can go in a professional ultrasonic. A lot of gemstones are a big no-no. So, make sure you don't put anything but diamonds and corundum. And to be safe, very few other things can go in an ultrasonic. But check up on that. Use your jeweler. Okay, so what we have is a very expensive rhodium solution, and I actually have 2 different colors, as you see here. And the point of this is to show you that rhodium is absorbed out of solution. It's a platinum group element, and over time it becomes yellower when the rhodium is used up. So what we're going to do, we're going to switch to a better, higher, new batch of rhodium. We take the anode that has rhodium, that is actually platinum plated. We put it in here, and then we're going to connect our work on the other end. This wire is actually a gold wire, and depending on whether I'm plating gold or whether I'm plating rhodium, it turns back and forth the different color. So rhodium plating is something a lot of jewelers don't do because it's expensive to do, but on white gold it is a must. It gives you your ring the look of platinum and restores it to the factory finish. So 15 or 20 seconds, wow, that I can already tell is so much whiter than it was. 14 karat being a nickel alloy with the pure yellow gold, remember, still has a slightly yellow tint. And it's the process of rhodium plating that makes it as white as the platinum is. All right, important to rinse it off very well. We'll do that with water and the steamer. And wow, look at that. We have our size 5 beautifully shiny and completed solitaire. And I must admit that rhodium, with the new rhodium, really took well and created a ring that is as every bit as white as if it were platinum. That very important to every white gold ring you ever get sized. Make sure they rhodium plated it. There you have another really wonderful segment that so many of you are able to relate to, the sizing down of a ring and the proper completion of the job, which includes that rhodium plating. Very unusual for you to get to see the behind the scenes. We just showed it to you. So I am really pleased that you joined me in this episode, if you call it. We're going to bring you some other very, very effective lessons on what you're going to be facing with other future projects that you may encounter. So make sure you join us for another wonderful time at the bench. And thank you so much once again. Me in my wonderful outfit here have enjoyed being every chance I get to spend with you behind the bench in the How Do You series. Thank you.